All right, this is Andrew Ridgie. The show is Hospitality and Politics. As always, it's powered by the New York City Hospitality Alliance. And today I'm with my friend, Jeffrey LeFrancois of the Meatpacking District Management Association, or
MDMA. Good to be here, Andrew.
It's so good to have you here. So there's going to be so much to talk about, but can we just talk about what your organization is, a BID, Business Improvement District?
Yep.
What is that?
Absolutely. So there's 78 bids across the 5 boroughs, actually, and each one is reflective, of its neighborhood makeup. So in Meatpacking, our job is charged with providing business support, marketing, programming, events, and then public space management. So all supplemental city services. We have a sanitation team, a big landscaping program, and then all our plazas and open streets. We manage and program all of that stuff. And our job at the end of the day is to be a cheerleader for all things meatpacking. So, we are home to Whitney Museum, Chelsea Market, your suite of great shopping across the neighborhood, great restaurants, hospitality, hotels, the whole nine. So our job is to amplify all of what they're doing.
So Meatpacking is the west side of Manhattan. What are the actual technical, or at least the technical
our
boundaries?
Little pocket,
yes,
technically is Horatio Street in the south to 17th Street in the north, 8th Avenue to the West Side Highway. So a compact little square, roughly 7 million square feet of commercial space, over 300 businesses, 7,000 or so residents across 4,100 units of housing. So still, it is a commercial district at its core, but we have a good chunk of residents in that district.
It's such a fascinating neighborhood. Can we talk, right now, and just every evolution of the Meatpacking District, but can you give us a little just background of the neighborhood?
It is a really storied history, not just sort of in the past, it's really 30 years to think about what a flashpoint the 90s were for how we know it today. But it was a prominent place for public markets when it sort of came to be. Goods trading hands, early 20th century, focus on meat and sort of processing of it and distributing around the city and the region. And then sort of fast forward, the advent of refrigerated trucking is really what changed the nature of meat processing and the change of the meatpacking district. And so from there, at one point were over 250 meatpacking plants, right? Processing butchers, dropped precipitously as meat began to get processed where it was slaughtered. Not to get a little gross here, but that was the major change. Yeah. And so fast forward to the 90s, whole bunch of underutilized space. Buildings started to get converted, loft, artist studio, club culture, right? That really came about in late 70s, 80s. The 90s were a real flashpoint for fashion. Jeffrey, not me, but another prominent Jeffrey, opened his store on 14th Street right off Washington. Pastis also opened in 1999. DVF, moved her headquarters there and is now still at home in Meatpacking. So, and then sort of keep going, Sex and the City era, Soho House, right? Major club scene of the aughts. And so this evolution of what it was to what it is now, I would say we've had 2 or 3 more iterations from the time of what a lot of people think about as meatpacking, which is, stumbling out of the club at 4 a.m., quite frankly, to what it is today, which is a very different neighborhood, still reflective of its roots, but much more steeped in arts and culture and fashion than it is really meatpacking and nightlife.
Yeah, no, Florent and then, Lotus and everything. There's just such a history. I spent a lot of time there, late 90s, early 2000s. And it really is such a place for, culture. It's, so many changes. I think it was a time when the city was changing. When you talk about the 90s and early 2000s,
absolutely,
it was when there's a real kind of transition of what was happening in the city. On the meatpacking, are there any meat packers? Because I think they just
closed up shop last summer. There was 8 of them left, but all sort of best of America stories, because some of them retired. And these were family businesses, multi-generational family businesses. Some of them retired. Some of them moved to 21st century facilities in the Bronx. Some of them bought their own place in Brooklyn. So very much a natural evolution of business. A sad moment that there's no longer meat processing in the neighborhood. But that's the nature of a 21st century city also, right? Things change.
Absolutely. I remember I was early 2000s. I was in culinary school and we did a trip to is it DeBrega and Spittler or something?
Sure.
I think they're one of the last ones.
That was there.
Yeah, that was there. And then I just always think about like when I was a kid, my grandfather, one of his favorite restaurants was, Old Homestead.
Still there.
I know.
We had dinner in Manhattan's there last week.
Wow, very nice. I mean,
Packed
such a
house,
class.
too.
That's great.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember him talking. He always loved it there. So yeah, just so many like great stories and memories and the whole evolution of the neighborhood. So how do you talk about it now? Like if someone, hears that story, it's clearly much different than when there were meatpacking plants or even in the, early 2000s.
Yeah.
How do you describe the neighborhood to someone now in your position?
It's a you've made it kind of place. We like to think of it as. It's a you want to be here. And also like we've joked, like it's not your mother's meatpacking. It's not your sister's meatpacking, right? It's much more grown up.
Yeah.
And we are seeing actually the folks that spent time down there in their club days, now they're coming back with their families, right?
Yeah.
And experiencing the neighborhood in a totally different way. So I mentioned much more steeped in arts and culture. The Whitney Museum of American Art moved down to Gansevoort Street in 2015. Really a stake in the ground moment for arts and culture on the West Side. And then sort of the symbiotic economy and community that grew up around the museum has really been transformative. The museum sees over 1 million visitors a year.
Wow.
We have the foot of the High Line on Gansevoort Street is in Meatpacking. 7 million plus visitors to the High Line a year. So cultural anchors in that sense. Hudson River Park has opened 3 amazing piers right on our western edge there. Gansevoort Peninsula, sort of the neighborhood park with the soccer field, the beach. You have Little Island, right, with 700-seat amphitheater, great programming. And then Pier 57, James Beard Food Hall, upstairs park, Google office is there, a whole bunch of great amenities. And so it is, we like to think of it as a neighborhood that is utterly 21st century, that is at home for fashion and tech and the best, in food and beverage. That is the backdrop of a 20th century neighborhood in New York City.
The Whitney is just phenomenal. I love it. We go there all the time. And it's really wonderful how it has kind of blended into the neighborhood. And like you said, it's such an anchor. And I was having a conversation the other day with someone, actually on my community board, just about like anchor institutions, anchor businesses, and how they allow other types of businesses in the community to flourish.
Absolutely.
And I think like a place like the Whitney, is amazing. I've gone there on Friday nights when they do the free for all.
Yep.
Or I forget
Free Friday Day. So they're celebrating Free Fridays. Actually, it'll be 2 years in this month, I believe, in January. That they've done Free Fridays. So every night after 5 o'clock, you can get to the museum, anybody for free. It's a total vibe. Yeah. It's a party, DJ scene going on. Well, whatever show's happening brings a crowd. They also are now free to anybody 25 and under.
Oh, wow.
Whenever they're open, anybody 25 and under, it's free. And then every second Sunday is free. So that's been a major, that's about access. And I love the idea of access because that brings people from all 5 boroughs. It shows... a lot of people that go to the Whitney identify as an artist, right? They might not make money as an artist, but they identify as one. Yeah. And so I think about a consumer profile, I love that people are discovering meatpacking through the Whitney because why is that going to bring them back? Whether they're sort of saving up to buy the bag or the jeans or going for martinis after the museum, right? It's happening in the neighborhood. Yeah.
On the Friday night I was there and, everyone talks crap, not everyone, like about like younger people and everything, but
I was doing
there,
or not?
Like, are they just sitting in the rooms? I was like amazed. I shouldn't have been, but on that Friday night, there were so many people out at the Whitney in like their early 20s, creatives, like, the diversity of people. It was such like a beautiful thing. And like, it made me feel happy because I was thinking like, I used to go to Meatpacking. I wasn't going to a museum there.
Absolutely.
I was going to party. Right. But it was so nice to see. And let's talk about the High Line because High Line Park is just such an amazing accomplishment. Can you talk a little bit about, what the High Line was and what it is today?
Sure. I'm proud to say I went to all 3 ribbon cutting openings of the phases of the High Line. I worked for elected officials on the west side of Manhattan, so I was always involved in that. I want to say, definitely 20 plus years ago is sort of what it was the mid-aughts when they got the idea to turn this elevated rail line into a park. First ribbon cutting was maybe, 2010, maybe 2010, 2011. And that was south of 23rd Street. And it has just become, it's one of the city's most popular tourist destinations. I'll be honest, early on, it was a problem from the business community, right? Because it removed a lot of people from the street.
Yeah, the foot traffic.
Exactly. It's now much more integrated into the community. They first of all added staircases, more access. But, I think folks that are visiting it realize there's also a whole experience to be had below the High Line. I personally still use it as a method of transportation, getting from A to B, skipping the street lights and cruising up there when I can. They also run a really robust public art program. They have a renowned curator, Cecilia Gentili, who absolutely is globally renowned. She was the curator of a Venice Biennale a couple of years ago. So they have a really robust and awesome public art program. They do a bunch of community programming as well. And it is a tremendous asset given not just for the community, but, from a tourism draw. It's a magnet for the West Side. Yeah, no, I mean, to take an old, abandoned, dilapidated, elevated, railroad and turn it into a public park and keep the essence and the core of the structure, but having the built environment all weaving in and out of it. It's really special.
It's fantastic. And like you said, the programming. I want to kind of transition into talking about how things like the Whitney and the High Line that are tourist destinations, but they're also destinations for New Yorkers too, weave into the whole social, cultural, and economic environment of the meatpacking district. Because I feel like your goal, and tell me if I'm wrong, is you're like the conductor at the bid and you want these things to harmoniously work together because they feed into each other and create a successful neighborhood.
Right, and to leverage what they're doing to feed into what we're able to do, right? That cross promotion of all that kind of stuff. So look, end of the day, tourism is critically important, not just to meatpacking, but as you know well, Andrew, the city of New York, right? Sure. And unfortunately, we're not seeing the numbers we'd like to be seeing right now as it relates to tourism. But the best thing we have going for us are these kinds of destinations and that people are choosing. People that want to come to New York, we find that they're choosing meatpacking. We had a great December. Our hotels did. The museums also did as well. So, our partnerships with them, we do a lot with the Whitney. Great relationship there. We join their West Side Fest, which is an annual weekend-long programming of cultural arts on the West Side. They hosted our annual meeting last year. We do a bunch of open streets programming with them as well. So they are not just a tourist destination. They are a community anchor and sort of community facility in many ways as well. And finding ways to stitch that in is other reasons that will get people to come to the neighborhood.
There's so much art and talking about the culture and bringing people, to the neighborhood when they're there to stay and have different interesting things. So you've done a lot of activation. So BID, you talk about open streets and the streetscape. What have been some really successful public activations that you've done? And then just what's your creative process with your team about thinking, okay, it's the winter right now. Going to be the spring. What should we do to bring and keep people here and keep it new and fresh and interesting?
Absolutely. And I am so, love this town. It's why we're here. It's home. And New York is so good at using arts as economic development. And I'm so happy that I have a board and a community that allows us to do that. So a couple of our biggest sort of hallmark events, in 2024, we hosted the Great Elephant Migration, which brought this amazing herd of 100 life-size Indian elephants across the district, right? And it was remarkable. We saw huge increases in foot traffic, especially now looking year over year, right? That huge spike that we got from that and what that did for the businesses, for the community, the draw, that organic PR around it was extraordinary. We were able to work with the city to program our plazas, create other parklets around the district. We look at a program to see what else can we do? All right, if we're going to have art come to the neighborhood, well, how are the planters that we need to move to host the art, what are those planters going to do? So for the elephants, which occupied mostly 9th Avenue and a couple of other spots around the neighborhood, all the planters that they displaced, we put them on Washington Street, made a whole bunch of seating areas on Washington Street to bring a program that hadn't existed there before. And the store owners, property owners, they loved it. And it really, what we love doing is showing proof of concept, right? You can talk about a lot of things, but until you can stand it up, people don't understand it a lot of the times. And, the struggle with parking is a thing. And so showing people that there is a higher value than just a parked car, which was that seating on Washington Street. And now we're looking at what can we do to bring a seating program to Washington Street long term is a great thing. So that Great Elephant Migration was a hallmark. A favorite party that we did was we hosted Dinner on Blanc, which, is hosted each year. in the city in a different location. We were the first to figure out how we could actually pop bottles of champagne in the street.
Wow.
And get a liquor license and like make that legally happen. We absolutely did.
Very nice.
So that was pretty awesome. That was probably 2023, perhaps. 4,000 people, right? They bring all their stuff, total amazing party. And, we have a couple of big art pieces coming later this year, and it's about figuring out the narrative to get people to come down, right? I really like New Yorkers choosing Meatpacking because whether you can afford to buy the bag or the jeans there, as a steward of the public realm, we want to make sure that experience outside is top notch as well. Yep. And whether you're buying that, cheap bodega coffee or the $9 latte, you are welcome to enjoy that in the neighborhood. And that's about sort of the community that we like to operate in.
Well, I think that's nice. I mean, I'm sure the stores, when people go in, they want them to buy something.
Absolutely.
But I also feel like, when people go there, there's so much because of the different stores you can go in and you can look, and it creates an excitement, and you need that kind of, diversity of people from all around coming and using the space in different ways, whether it's just to purchase something, whether it's to hang out, to look at art, go out for a meal.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about retail diversity. We are such a service economy now. I forget what the exact percentages are, but, manufacturing, meatpacking, gone. It has to be 80%, I would guess, or more.
Right.
Service, economy. So much has gone through food and beverage. I'm always talking about even traditional retail, non-food and beverage businesses are beginning, and it's not that new, but it's happening more and more, to incorporate some sort of food and beverage component from the barber shop that has, the bar, or,
totally.
I go, and I was in the neighborhood not too long ago, and I forget what, it was like a sunglass or an eyeglass store. They were having some sort of party inside. Yeah. How do you think, and what is your involvement, if at all, with the bid of talking about retail diversity with the building owners and making sure that you have like a right mix that's going to attract people where they know they can go to get these types of items. They know they can get a great meal, a great drink.
Yep.
But so it's not like all the same.
Yep. Totally. So a lot of the stuff that we do, we have big data profiles that we share. We like to point out the gaps in the neighborhood and really share what our mix looks like. We skew luxury. There's a number of reasons for that, but it's not our only makeup in terms of retail. We have some outstanding hospitality and food and beverage offerings also, like real anchors. A couple of new favorites, Barbudo has now moved to Horatio Street, but they've opened a new wine bar. Bartesio is a great spot. Smaller, more intimate, different menu, different wine list, different cocktail list. A great moment there. Bangkok Supper Club is crushing it. Medusa Mediterranean is amazing. Crane Club. Bagatelle's coming back to 14th Street.
Yes.
Later this year. We're very excited about that. Delilah, do you know Delilah?
Yeah.
They're opening on 14th and 9th. So like some really exciting moments with Chez Margot, leading the way in terms of that members club nightlife experience. But on that curation front, look, neighborhoods ebb and flow. And there's nobody controls it except sort of the market, frankly, and the property owner and the desire of what people want to do. Restaurants are not an easy business. Yeah. You know that just as well as any restaurant owner, right? Between the margins and economic changes. And then, a kitchen is a complicated thing to set up in a Manhattan building. And a lot of my property owners are family property owners and have been generationally, in ownership in these properties. It's hard. Yeah. It's difficult. And so, it is, could we wave a magic wand and I have 10 more cafes and 5 more restaurants? Yeah. Sure. It's not going to happen. Yeah. But we're ever an optimist. We have a flurry of new lease signing. And I think something that's exciting is that we get to position the neighborhood as a place where people are choosing to spend their time because that experience outside matches the offerings you're getting inside. Yeah.
Well, listen, talking about outside, I love, just like the outdoor dining culture, there's something that brings, especially Meatpacking, such a vibrancy. Can you talk a little bit about just like the restaurant food scene there, the outdoor dining? Because I feel like that in that neighborhood is really such a quintessential and essential, part of the neighborhood and the vibe.
Absolutely. I would love to have Meatpacking lead the way on sort of New York City's sort of new age cafe culture, right? Of which we've all experienced in so meaningful ways across Europe and other cities around the country and the world. So, outdoor dining was a transformative program during the pandemic. Unfortunately, as we well know, it's been scaled back significantly. I'm optimistic for sort of what the new era of the city will bring us as it relates to how we can use the space outside for dining. I think Meatpacking is primed for a lot of it. Again, commercial neighborhood for the most part. And, you know, it unfortunately, a lot of it, like I said, has been scaled back. We're pushing our restaurants to think about how they can program differently and make the investment worth it. We've stood up a couple of programs to make sure that if they are doing outdoor dining, we have something going on to make sure there's stuff happening around it, that their street is active, things are happening, what's going on. People want to also eat outside. And so, you know, you achieve success, I think, in outdoor dining based on density and the energy that you can create through that. So, you know, do I want to sit at a restaurant that's got one table outside? Probably not.
You want the vibe.
Right? You want a vibe. And like, it was amazing the vibes that were created from what sort of became those extensions of the restaurants. I understand some of the complaints about noise, right? Quality of life. There's some issues there. But those are all solvable. And right now the program is just not worth so many restaurants' investments.
What in your neighborhood are some of the issues that you think need to change for outdoor dining so it can be more successful than it is now?
Look, the storage is a factor. And while we're having a cold winter right now, last year that was not the case, right? I was eating outside at this time of year last year. So the truncated program is a problem.
So that's the seasonality of the roadway cafes, where during the cooler months, you have to remove them, store them, only to then pay to set them back up. And it's made it cost prohibitive and just an operational headache for businesses to
And you have to do that every year, set up and take down. That's a lot. You know, I'm interested to think about how DOT will continue to think about global corridors. They've identified Gansevoort Street as a global corridor, which has significantly reduced the footprint of Pastice's outdoor dining. And that's like a neighborhood anchor. And talk about a vibe that they had outside there. It was awesome. And I have to say, people, even those that would typically be a naysayer, they weren't happy that had happened to Pastice. So I think the city needs to really, frankly, sit in our shoes or a business owner's shoes and think about how we want our streetscape to feel.
Well, so business improvement districts, while you manage the public realm, it is also a partnership with the city through the city's Department of Small Business Services. And you have worked around government. What's your view? We obviously have a new mayor, Zoran Mamdani, new Department of Transportation, DOT commissioner, and there's a lot of talk about how is the city going to change under the new administration. So from like your perspective, the bid perspective, what are you seeking for the relationship to be with the city, the new administration? What are some of the things that you're hoping could happen to allow you to continue to nurture and evolve the Meatpacking District?
Well, I'm very optimistic and super excited about Mayor Mamdani, Speaker Menon, and what they have in store for us and how we can figure out to be a productive partner with them. So while BIDS and my organization, right, we're private nonprofits, we have contracts with the city. You mentioned Department of Small Business Services, also DOT. We're stewards of the public realm, right? So we have technical responsibilities, but we need to be treated like a trusted partner. We need to be able to more easily do things. And my team and I, we spend so much time dealing with bureaucratic process. I can't tell you how long it takes to get clearances on RFPs, on all these things that like should not take a year, and yet somehow they do. Like, we're a nonprofit, it's our job to do this, but if like I got a private business, I'm making a decision whether or not I'm doing it or not at the end of the day, based on just the process it takes to go through. That's not okay that's the case in New York City.
Yeah, you really have to plan out. Well, I think it's hopeful that, you know, there's a lot of talk with the new administration that they want to change this. They want to try to streamline permitting, licensing, reducing, you know, all of the fees. So I think it's good, but I do believe that, you know, groups like the Hospitality Alliance, the BID, I know the BID is the association that represents.
So I'm co-chair of the association currently, right? So all 78 bids across the city, quite a group, 78 of us, all 5 boroughs. And, you know, we put together a package of policy papers that we presented to the mayor's team, and we're presenting the speaker on like what we'd like to see in public realm and business support services, quality of life, you know, public safety, all that kind of stuff, because, you know, improving improving quality of life for everybody is good for business, right? Like across the board.
Yeah.
And so how we can become a more trusted partner, because oftentimes we become an agent of the city. Yeah. We help effectuate an agenda sort of no matter who the mayor is. So how to make sure we're sort of seen as a, having a seat at the table to effectuate that change is really important.
Well, I also think your institutional knowledge and experience is critically important because, mayors and city council members serve terms.
Yes.
So, mayors, city council members, borough presidents, come and go, but the bids are the constant. Yep. And I think it's so important that you are able to educate them, work collaboratively with them on these issues, but also be able to give new administrations, new council members, that institutional knowledge of what has worked in the past, what hasn't, and then that transition period. Because I have to imagine there's projects that you're working on or have worked on that are like, relate with funding or policy decisions that could change from council member to mayor, to council member. And I mean, I'm just thinking one of the big things is we've spoken about it, which is a major, major international event later this year, the World Cup.
It's coming.
It's coming. And it's super, super exciting. Millions of people coming to New York City, billions of people watching it around the globe, all eyes on New York City. And it's transitioning from one mayoral administration to another administration, and Mayor Mamdani has spoken very highly, and he's excited.
A soccer guy.
Exactly, about this. So what is the Meatpacking District doing, thinking about the World Cup? What's in store?
We want to not only leverage, interestingly, we're so excited about the games, right? We got the finals. It's going to be amazing. Yeah. But my thing is, how do we make sure the folks that are choosing to come to town for a game for a weekend or a week, right? What are they doing when there's not a game on?
Yeah.
And how can we get them to come to the neighborhood, right? What's that going to look like to draw people in, get them out of their hotels, get them out of the neighborhood they're staying in, frankly, to explore more of the city. So that's where partners like the Whitney come into play. Yeah. What brand activations are going to take place in the off moments of games going on? How can we leverage our plazas, our open streets? Not just in those game moments, but in the off times, given, like you point out, millions of people, eyes on the city. Not everybody's going to have tickets to go see it, right, at the stadium. So where are they going to watch it? And then all the other stuff. So we're working on a suite of programming right now that we're going to lay out to make sure we can do our best to capture those audiences. It's FIFA, right? That's the World Cup. They have licensing fees, all sorts of stuff that goes with streaming. So we're going to figure out what that's going to look like in our neighborhood. And then we're trying to sort of coordinate with the brands that sponsor the World Cup on the whole to figure out what their plan for activations are. And of course, the mayor is very excited about the World Cup. I personally am as well. What does the city want to achieve from this is what I'm anxious to want to know what they're looking to achieve and how we can play a part in that.
Yeah, I think it's so cool because I think, obviously soccer is so international and there's so many neighborhoods. So there are so many incredible creative ways for different neighborhoods to activate, and particularly those that have the support of a business improvement district. And I'm just thinking, for the sake of this conversation, like, in the Meatpacking District, you have the restaurants, you have nightlife, you have arts, you have fashion, sports, all these things are in one place. So you could do something that really blends and
global brand
them all. So cool. And I think also, like, when people come from around the globe to visit New York, you go to the Meatpacking to see it. So all the people, the different, accents, the different languages that you hear. It's a good place to do that. Really quick, I want to get back just one of the technical things about business improvement districts, because we were talking a lot about the work that you do.
Sure.
How are bids funded?
Sure. So generally speaking, bids are funded through an assessment on commercial property that ends up on a property owner's tax bill. And then that money is given to us. And we have very strict requirements on how that money is to be spent, right, on and in the neighborhood. In addition to that assessment, mine is a cost per square foot. Some of my colleagues, it's a percentage of assessed value. It's linear frontage. There's a whole bunch of different formulas. Some bids have a residential assessment, more and more kind of leaning towards that actually. And then in addition to that assessment, which is like our core base funding, we have sponsorship dollars. I get to raise a lot of money from our plaza activations. So commercial activations that happen on the plaza, they pay the city. They pay me as the manager of the plaza as well. And then, if we do events, we get to sponsor them, right? Baccarat's got this amazing chandelier in one of our plazas right now. They just opened their new headquarters in Meatpacking. It's this 8-foot tall suspended chandelier from a 20-foot glass box right in the plaza.
I
right?
walked past
so
it. Yeah,
that's a commercial activation,
yeah.
but that's a really awesome moment happening, supporting our holiday lights on the cobbles program. So they sponsored that. And so there's a whole bunch of other ways through which a bid can raise revenue, but at that core is our assessment.
Who's in charge? So you mentioned cobble, so the cobblestone. I mean, that...
I love them, but I also hate them.
I think, but I can imagine, because I mean, now it's so much better. I mean, I remember just how bad those streets were, and like the gross puddles. You'd walk out of a club, and it's broken, all of that stuff. But they've gotten so much better. So how the upkeep? What
all credit to the community, the city, and then funding from the state and the city. So back 2009, 10, a real flashpoint of nightlife, and people got together and realized we have so much space outside of Meatpacking, we need to redo it. Let's figure out the plaza program, all this stuff. So we cobbled together, upwards of $38 million from the city, state, and feds to completely redo all of 9th Avenue and all the side streets in the neighborhood from Gansevoort to 15th Street. Really a 5-year project that has transformed the look and feel, really formalized it more. That you can't compete with the cobblestone aesthetic. You can't.
No I know. It's amazing. But the thing was like, you see someone walking out of a club, it's like the high heel gets stuck, and then it's like into a puddle, or
somebody tumbles.
Whatever. Yeah.
Yep. And so, really updated it, brought it into 21st century spec. They're not without fault, unfortunately. And I wish the city was better at figuring out how we could be perfect at them, but nothing's perfect. At the end of the day, it's that backdrop for the neighborhood that you just can't compete with. Yeah. So that's all on the city. I believe there are fewer people tripping when they come out of the clubs, because the cobbles are a little bit more stable now.
Absolutely. No, it's good. You bring such whether we're talking about cobblestone or, assessments or incredible art installations, you bring like an enthusiasm
Thank you.
And an excitement to all
I love my job. I'm very lucky.
I was going to say, what do you do like on a day-to-day basis, and like where does your enthusiasm for all of this come from?
I love the city. I also love cities in general. I'm an urbanist, right? And something I just have found to love so much about my job is we get to make tangible change on the streets of the city, whether it's our team keeping it clean, or like last year we stood up the 14th Street Promenade, which was an amenitization project of 14th Street between 9th and 10th, expanding the sidewalk, creating program space. I just think it's so much fun to be able to see the work that you do. And a lot of my job lets me do that. So we have I say a team, but it's me plus 5 others right now. Sort of marketing folks and planning and operations folks, making sure that that the core of our service is clean, safe, and beautiful, right? That's what it's got to be. You can't do anything else if you're not delivering that core. And then it's all the plus on top of it. I have a great board of directors. We have a very enthusiastic retail committee that sort of likes big ideas, crazy ideas, and how do we realize them and make stuff happen? Because at the end of the day, as we've talked about, it's about foot traffic, right? It's economic development at its core. But what are the creative ways that we can deliver on it? PR, right? Attention, all that kind of stuff. Connection to the history of the neighborhood is really important. And it's a fine line to walk, right? Because I'm not one to talk about the death of a city or the death, right? I don't believe in that. Like neighborhoods change. That's the nature of a city. I think we learned during the pandemic that when the city is not moving, the city's not healthy. And so that evolution is really important to it. So, New York puts a pep in my step. It really does.
Pep in my step.
And so it works out really great that I have a job that I get to. I always joke when I'm talking to DOT or an agency, it's just like, say yes to me.
Yes.
Because we're gonna make it work. We're gonna make it look good. It's gonna make the city look good. And that's what I love doing.
I'd like to say yes to me. So how long have you been in this position now?
So executive director for 7 years now, with the organization for 11.
Okay.
It's kind of wild to me.
In that time, what are words of wisdom or best practices for managing a business improvement district, for helping to manage and enhance a neighborhood? Are there 2 or 3 things that you bring to your work every day, from strategic planning, just board management, organizational management, big picture, something very, very small? When you walk through the district, what are you looking at? I'm sure a lot, but just
sure. I think you want to have a board and make sure you have a board that like is supportive of big ideas, right? That likes things to happen. That's what allows me and my team to do so much. I think experimentation is so important, right? New York is a city of entrepreneurs, right? You don't get something done without giving it a try. And oftentimes the city gets in its way because it's afraid to try. Bids are really good at trying something. We're able to be nimble, provided we can get the approvals to do it. And so I think that is something I'm always looking for is what's the next thing we can experiment with, try out? Does it work? Well, let's stand it up. If it doesn't work, how do we change it? You can't be afraid of failure. I mean, still afraid of failure, but like, how do you learn and grow from it? So that proof of concept, I mentioned that earlier, that's a really important thing to sort of work around, and a willingness to experiment. You have to make sure you have a team in place who like is supportive, has the crazy ideas, right? Believes in like the work that they're doing, whether or not, right, you sort of identify completely with the neighborhood. What are you doing to bring yourself to it at the same time? And, I think a competitive spirit is always really important too. While I am a huge champion of all the work that every bit in this town does, I'm also looking with the side eye, like, what are they doing? What are they doing? Want to know. And my partner, I'm so lucky that he like knows that when we're traveling, if I see, I got to go take a picture of this street treatment, right? Or what's this free programming that's happening, right? So it's a fun.
Is he in the same world or
not
a different?
At all?
Okay,
not at all. But like he knows what I pay attention to. Like, oh my God, we find a pedestrian street and he's screaming about it too. So it works out really perfectly. We both have a love for that at the same time.
What's interesting too about your bit, I'm listening to the conversation as we're having it, and you obviously have the public, you have New Yorkers, you have visitors from around the globe, you have residents, which are all your stakeholders, but then you have the building owners that pay the assessment, and sometimes that may be passed on to the commercial tenant, whether it's a restaurant or bar, nightclub, or retail store, museums, the Highline Park, the other public park, Chelsea Market, on and on and on. Your board of directors, your retail board. It sounds like you just have so many different stakeholders that you need to manage. How do you go about that from just not totally losing your mind?
I love that. Some days I do. You have a board.
But I know.
Look, my background is government and politics, and I love dealing with and talking to people. And I also was on my community board for 10 years, chaired it for the last 2, right? Like you learn a lot in those instances of managing people and the how. So you have to put the time in, right? A willingness to connect with people, figure out what they want. How do you align on goals? How do you connect with them? Talk to them, understand what they want. How do you, bring together the difference between the retailer, the property owner, the restaurant, like you said, the museum, all of that. It takes time. A lot of my job is talking to people, day in and day out on sharing what we want to do. What do they want to do? I think it's really important to be able to reference things that people want, right? Like, oh, we've been talking about this and now look what's come to life. Like, channeling people's feedback and turning it into something is really important on that deliverable of good. Right? Like I have a team, but then I got a bunch of board members like that. Those are my bosses. And I'm lucky because everybody sees the community. It's a good community that we're in. And it's time, Andrew. You kind of got to put this time in, talk to people, build the relationships. I certainly could not have achieved on day one, right? When I sort of took over, the job as executive director and it's taken me a long time to be able to achieve the things that we've been able to do through trust, right? Relationship building, all that kind of stuff. But I love it. It's part of the fun for sure. So
putting in the time, people, talking to people, not being scared to fail, being scared to fail, but not letting that stop you from taking those actions.
It can't stop you. And I think you have to find a way to instill that in your board too, right? Because your board, for me, it's their money. And so how am I showing that? Whether you want to couch for some maybe not failure, but you want to couch for some underwhelming success. But making sure that like, look, we're trying things because we want to be the best that we can be, and we can't do that without trying. So, big picture, you were just sort of summarizing on those points.
All right, restaurants. Let's talk, because you mentioned a lot of really good restaurants, bars, nightlife.
Oh God, yeah.
Just tell me, recently, a couple of the restaurants in the neighborhood, bars, clubs, even retail stores. Give me a list of like some really good experiences, meals, things you bought, places you've walked.
I mentioned it already, but Bartesio is a new concept by Jonathan Waxman, owner of Barbudo. Yeah. Small little spot, wine bar, great martinis. And it's intimate. It feels really right. We don't have a lot of intimate spaces in the neighborhood. That's not sort of our nature. That's been a lot of fun. Hasn't even been open a year yet. That's great. Right on Horatio Street, sort of backside of the district. Pastis is the powerhouse, right? There's no competition. It's extraordinary. For the best views of the neighborhood, have lunch at RH Rooftop. Like it's
so beautiful.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Whether it's pouring outside or it's sunny, like you feel so awesome up there having that. Gansevoort Hotel, right? They did a whole renovation during the pandemic, and like they're, for a person who ended up many times at the Gansevoort Hotel in those club days.
Yeah. I remember when it first opened.
It's very different now. Yeah. It's all grown up, as they say. Their lobby, coffee and cocktails, is a great place to have breakfast or a martini at night. It's a great vibe. We've got Crane Club over on 10th Avenue is in the district. That's relatively new still. I mentioned Chez Margot. That's a members club, but like people are banging down the door to get in there. Soho House is still hot. The Grill, I don't want to say it's having a renaissance, but like the standard is kicking, right? My hotels were super busy in December. They have a great happy hour, weekend brunch, still crushing it. Bangkok Supper Club is down on Hudson Street. Make your reservation. You will not regret it. It's all inspired by Thai street food. It's fantastic. Another, oh God, I'm blanking on the name. I'll get there in a minute. Chelsea Market has a whole bunch of new concepts that are going to be opening in this year. Stuff moving out, stuff moving in. Like that's kind of always the fun of it. But some major anchors there still as well. That place, it's amazing. Yeah, what the powerhouse of food that comes out of Chelsea Market.
It is really incredible. Every time I walk through there, I'm still like,
my favorite place, if you haven't been yet in there, it's called In Between. Okay. It is a Tokyo-inspired speakeasy. The food is out of this world. Their In Between martini. As you can tell, I think I've said martini like 4 times in this interview. Martini guy is awesome, but their cocktail list is fantastic. They got a DJ that spins vinyls. The vibe is like you feel like you've stepped into a little cafe speakeasy in Tokyo. It is awesome. Hard to get a reservation. Walk in there at like 8:30 on a weekday. You'll get a seat at the bar. Fantastic. Nice. In Between, that one's called.
And then you have the other food hall on the James Beard. And
yes, at Pier 57 across the way. Yeah, exactly. James Beard Foundation, they're the curators of that food hall in partnership with Jamestown. So that's inside Pier 57, which is a big public pier that was redone as a part with Hudson River Park. I want to say there's a dozen concepts in there right now. Give or take, as well as the James Beard room that they have where different chefs come in and you can book it out for a private tasting or have your own event there. There's also these 3 community classrooms that are there that like if you have a nonprofit or a block association, you can book a room there and have a space. But no, the food hall there, all different concepts that are at Chelsea Market. But again, a concentration.
There's so much good. Chelsea Market, there's so much good food as well. Either Column Pistol or in the market, the salmon burger is like, I have to always get that. So even if I go get food somewhere else,
you're still getting it. Yeah. Oh God, yeah. That's me at Miznon, which is Israeli street food. Gosh, I mean, like, oh my God, Andrew.
Okay, all right. So there's so much stuff. Just the point is basically just go there hungry.
Yes.
Just be hungry.
And I love it. You know what you should do is have some drinks and then go shopping, please. And like that.
I know that
the store associates will take very good care of you.
Very nice. Okay, really quick. Future Meatpacking District. Yeah. Anything super exciting? You mentioned the World Cup, but other things that are coming up, and just like, what do you think of the future, the next couple of years, is going to happen in the neighborhood?
I'm really excited about the mayor's vision for the streetscape and improving how New Yorkers get from A to B. I really value what that experience feels like in New York, in Meatpacking and in wider part of New York City. So how does that translate? How does that allow us to do more? Again, for me, it's about getting offering something that gets people to come down to the neighborhood. So how are we going to continue to grow on our streetscape plan that we've done over the past several years, and support the restaurants and the retailers that are there and doing it? That's top of mind for us right now. Making sure quality of life, like safety, all that as well stays in check. But we're also at, I feel like, another inflection point of like what's next for the city. And I think there's a lot in store based on a very ambitious set of goals and agenda that's been laid out. How do we be a part of that? I think big events like the World Cup make it easier to build the momentum for things. But how do we make sure that we keep that going? Once the World Cup goes away, what's the next big thing for the city? How can we play a role in that? We're thinking a lot about that. From an arts perspective, the Whitney has the biennial this year, and then a huge Roy Lichtenstein retrospective of his life's work that's going to be opening later this year. But big future, I'm a more is more guy. And I very much
love
see
it.
that
I'm excited.
Coming. I see that coming to the West Side. I mentioned the West Side Cultural Network. That's this budding sort of connectivity of, or a group of West Side cultural organizations that really focus on all their arts and culture on the West Side. How do we tie that into hospitality is always a key factor, right? I love when there's connections between those things happening. And, you know, I will say, like, we still have nightlife. I want more of it. There's no question I want more of it. Well, by the way, it'll be a 2.0 experience of what nightlife is in Meatpacking. It's not going to be that aughts experience, and that's okay. It'll be different. But, you know, I think we're also, you deal with this, and I'll get a little personal for a moment. We live in Hell's Kitchen. It's been harder and harder to get a meal later at night. How do we figure out how to continue to revive that? We've talked a lot about that. I don't think it's gone. No, I think it's coming back in a new. It's a refresh of what's all happening.
I think things evolve, and I think when people feel that something is missing or it wasn't the way it was, that's an opening for some creative entrepreneur to do something new.
Completely,
you know. And I think it's just the lens that you put on stuff. You know, it's like talking about Meatpacking. I talk with people all the time. Is nightlife dead? Is this dead? Oh, this neighborhood wasn't like it used to be. And in some cases, that's true. But like, you could go through every decade and say the same thing. And, you know, the kids don't know anything now, right? It's like, it's like, you know, everything was always so much cooler and more authentic when you personally were going through it. So I think that there's just so much good stuff and opportunity, and what you were saying, having bids, but also letting government not over-regulate, not overcomplicate, and basically creating the conditions to allow creative people, entrepreneurs, the ability to do great things and create the next type of nightlife, the next restaurant experience, the next musical genre, the new art. And that's what it's about, you know, creating the environment. And you have an evolving environment, and you've been doing such incredible work, and I get excited in everything you're doing. If people want to learn more about the Meatpacking District Management Association, all the things that have happened and are going to happen in your neighborhood, where do they find out?
Our Instagram handle, most popular stuff there, right? At Meatpacking NY. Our website is meatpacking-district.com. We're also on all the channels, LinkedIn, YouTube, all that kind of good stuff. And, you know, we actually, just an interesting tidbit, we see a lot of desktop traffic on our website. That's been a big increase in the past year because people are planning their time, right? They're back at their desk. Let's figure out what we're going to do. You know, don't tell the bosses. But we love that kind of data. So meatpacking-district.com, make your plan, come down. We have a whole map section of the website. Always what's fresh, what's going on down there. And we'd love to have any and all of everybody coming through.
That's such a smart little thing, by the way, is to be looking at where your traffic's coming, because that helps you get a better understanding of what people may be doing and how you target.
Right? That we push out a happy hour story or something, right?
You're going to have to come back.
Love to.
I'm going to come visit.
Please do.
I'm there. And this is Hospitality and Politics. I'm Andrew Ridgey. Show is powered by the New York City Hospitality Alliance. Thank you so much for coming on.
Great to be here. Thanks, Andrew.